Not.
Why not?
I mean, it's there. Let's see if it's working.
Let's check all the things.
What's your YouTube channel?
What's it called? Midlife Pilot or something?
Got it. Yep, it's working.
It is working. We have internet.
I probably
Well,
will jinx us, but we've been pretty fortunate with a lack of technical difficulties generally with these.
I don't know why you'd even say that
We're
out
doomed
loud.
now. Let's do it.
You have you've done it. All right, are you ready to do this?
Yeah, man.
Let's fire it up. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. This is the podcast all about flight and flying in midlife and all of the things that go along with it. It's episode 30, and tonight is going to be a fun one, kind of a chill hang experience, an Ask Us Anything episode where anything goes, and we'll talk about whatever the folks joining us live tonight in the chat room want to talk about tonight. So it should be a good time. I am Chris Moran, the Midlife Pilot on YouTube, and I'm joined by my friend, musician, audio engineer, filmmaker, drone pilot, record collector, all things 80s, including cars for Music Row. It's Brian Siskind. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm glad it's good to be back, and it's good to see you back in the hangar with the OG 52 Lima. For those on the audio podcast that'll be getting this, if you're familiar with Chris's channel, you know this plane very well, and it's kind of I think the Cherokee 235 is great, but it's kind of like, when you see your friends grow up out of high school, then they go to college, and then they get a BMW or something. You're like, good for you. I'm glad you've got a BMW, but you're always going to be the guy that drove the Honda Accord that had the really cool stereo in it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's good to see you next to 52 Lima.
Well, it's definitely good to be back near her again. If those of you, a lot of you haven't probably heard this story yet, there's a video coming out here this week about it. This airplane has been out of commission since October. This is a plane that I learned to fly in. It was the original plane that we put in the flying club that I run here, and have a lot of training activities and stuff that go on in it. And it had an unfortunate incident on landing on a student solo that it ended up with a prop strike on the runway on landing, and bent the prop up. The engine, the saving grace of the entire thing was that this engine was due for an overhaul, and it was actually scheduled for like now, but the owners of the plane agreed to, like, let's just do the overhaul early. And so we put the thing down, got a whole new engine. We didn't do the overhaul of the existing one. We did one of those like exchange deals where, like, we bought another engine, an overhauled engine, they shipped it to us, we put it on here, and then we're shipping the old engine back. So the plane has about 20 hours on it now since the overhaul. It's fully broken in. It's back to normal operation. And the video is coming out this week. I put hour number 6 on the new engine during the break-in. So there'll be some break-in shenanigans to show in this video this week. So that's been a really cool experience. I've learned a ton about that process and what all goes into, like, swapping out an engine and all the things that go along with it. But super great to have it back. It is nice. And I also noticed some folks commenting it's warmer in the hangar tonight. I'm in short sleeves. Last episode I did from another hangar here on the field, and it was like 2 degrees and I was freezing the whole night. So it is much more palatable this evening here in West Virginia.
Man, well, that's awesome. I can't wait to see what you make around telling the story of the renaissance of 52 Lima. And it's such a I don't know. It's just that plane has a vibe, so it's just cool that it's back and that you've got, even more power, more horsepower.
That's right.
Uh,
Same rated horsepower, but it's definitely making power that it wasn't before. There's no question.
yeah. So, yeah, and then also real quick, I wanted to do before we forget, I wanted to shout out, and if we didn't last time, congratulations to Steve Cross, who is a buddy of mine here who passed his private pilot check ride, and has been, finally able to get out and fly his friends around and all of that stuff, and it's been really cool to see that happen. And then also big congrats to also Evan for passing his instrument check ride. And for those that are not in the Discord, I think everybody should be in the Discord or try to find your way there. We'll not make it too gated for you, but we have a group of people there that are pretty good with sharing knowledge and encouraging each other. And rumor has it there's going to be a debrief. I think it's tonight after this podcast where Evan and his son, who's a CFI, are going to break down the instrument check ride that he just experienced while it's still fresh. And so I, being an instrument student, very interested in taking the knowledge where I can get it. And you know, I was talking to you earlier, Chris. And I've mentioned this probably many times, but I'll continue to mention it, that when I did my private pilot training, I didn't have a peer group. I didn't have the community. I didn't have the support in the ways that I see kind of happening right now. I had your channel, which made me feel connected to the idea that being a midlife pilot is going to be, challenging, but you can totally do
Mhm.
it. And then I had, my other resources, but, it's just really cool to see things where everybody's connecting in the background and sharing information and helping move people forward. It's really what it's all about. And then the last thing I want to mention is we're gonna we were talking earlier, and I'll share this with the audience, but one of the things that I want to try to wrap into the podcast, at least touch on in every episode, if we can, if we have time, is something that is a common touch point or point of consideration around safety. And, we are not CFIs and we are not here to tell you authoritatively these things, but we can source information from other people that have written great books, and then we can have little conversations about them. And so there was a bit in the Killing Zone that I know many of you have read, that I was looking over today. I had this on my coffee table. People come in and they just think, what is this? But that's uplifting. Yeah, let's go fly. So anyway, I just, I've read it twice all the way through, and then I still kind of pick it up and kind of randomly just glance, if I have a couple of minutes. I just always want to keep that stuff fresh. And I came across one of the sort of tales in it today that I thought might be cool to kind of just read the scenario and the probable cause, and then maybe we can talk about it a little bit, and people in the chat can chime in, and our audio podcast people that are our primary audience here can benefit from maybe just being reminded that some of these things can happen. And the scenario that we'll get into, it struck me because it was the same kind of plane that I fly generally, and it was a situation where it just seems like, wow, that's an entirely possible thing that you could get into. So anyway,
Mhm.
we'll touch on that later. But for
I keep
now,
I keep my copy of The Killing Zone in the airplanes on the passenger seat, so that when I take people with me for the first time, I just have them look through it while I'm getting started up and we're on the ground, and I see if we actually make it to takeoff or not before they say, like, on second thought, I'm just gonna get out, and
yeah,
you
I'm
can
10 pages in. This looks not great. Yeah.
you can knock yourself out.
Yeah. So cool. And then otherwise, I'll just really quickly update you on what I've been doing, which is I spent all day Sunday flying and all day Monday flying. It was the first good weather we had here in a long time, and I flew 7.7 hours in 2 days, and had a great time. I went to Sikeston, Missouri. It's always really cool to fly across the Mississippi River, and then we go to the Lamberts where you get bread thrown at you. It's a great restaurant, and then and that was with a person that had never flown in a small plane before, so that was a really great thing. And then I came back and then did a night flight, or a sort of evening to night flight, with another friend that had never been in a small plane before. Did a little downtown scenic tour and all that. That was really special. And then Monday took another friend of mine up who had maybe been up in one plane a long time ago, And we went down to Alabama. Went to Guntersville, Alabama, which is 8 Alpha 1, someplace I've been trying to go to for a while. Finally did. Beautiful waterfront, runway, beautiful approach. And got there. We were planning on getting a crew car, going into town, and then the guy at the FBO says, "No, sorry, no crew car. The last person backed it into a dumpster and smashed the back window out." So
Wow.
we got back in the plane, went over to Coleman, and then we go to the restaurant. They have a restaurant on the field there. It's like this old kind of diner that's up in the top of the FBO. We're super excited, pretty hungry. Go up there, and the woman says, "Oh gosh, sorry, we're all out of propane. We can't cook anything." Yeah. And my buddy was like, "Is this what you were talking about? Like where you just sort of have to kind of go with the flow?" I'm like, "Exactly." We got a crew car. They were super welcoming. We went into town, had an awesome time. And then there's this place there called the Ave Maria Grotto that is the strangest, most beautiful place, but it's basically the shortest story version is that in the 1800s, there was a huge German influx there, and this sort of Catholic influx there. And these monks made this huge sort of park in the forest that is of the with all these miniature architectural models and things that are of such detail that it's kind of incredible. Look up Ave Maria Grotto and you'll be amazed at what it is. And then they also have bread and cookies. And so we bought some bread, bought some cookies, flew back to Nashville, and everything was great. So the weather, it was one of those things where the weather was just, there was never even a question about the conditions. It was just great both days. So I just wanted to share
I
that.
saw the video of your landing at Nashville International, which looked incredibly cool. You flew
Oh yeah.
7.7 hours in 2 days. I was just looking at my logbook in ForeFlight. I haven't flown 7.7 hours in the last 90 days. I'm
Mm.
5.6 over the last 90. So you in 2 days um, did 90 days worth of work on
Well,
mine for
hey,
mine.
making up for lost time because there was definitely I had a more than 30-day lapse there because of just end of Christmas, plane went into annual, all these things. So even, but you're a better pilot than I am. So it's easier for you to keep your skills
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I,
up. Oh
I
man.
suppose I suppose if you want to go that route. Um, got some
So
new
that's
folks in
that's
the
what
chat.
that's what we're here to debate tonight, Chris. Who's
Yep,
better?
we'll compare our pilotage skills.
Mhm.
We got a couple new folks in the chat tonight. I see Flying Past 50 is here.
Mm.
He says, "Hey all, 57-year-old student pilot with 9.5 hours." And he says, "Newbies like me count half hours like toddlers
Yeah,
count half year old." Hey, every
that's right.
every every tenth counts. Every tenth counts.
Yeah,
So
welcome. That is
we're
awesome.
I'm glad to have you and glad to hear you're flying. I can't wait to hear more about all the stuff you've got going on. It's a good reminder too for everybody who's hanging out in the chat tonight. Definitely post your questions and stuff we want to talk about tonight in the chat here, and we'll make sure to get to as much of it as we can over the next 45 minutes or so.
And we have another one here from Les. Says longtime listener, first time chatter. 62-year-old PPL student training at KSNA, a very busy class Charlie in the busiest TRACON in the country, SoCal. Oh yeah,
Oh,
very
nice.
cool. Yeah, 62. I mean, we
SNA. I've spent some quality time in the flight sim with Pilot Edge air traffic control at SNA. That's in their zone, and so I've done a bunch of simulator stuff in and around SNA online.
man, that's yeah. I mean, that looks like a lot more challenging navigation and control conversations than what we have around here.
Oh, for sure.
Um, so there was a question that was early in the thread, um, and I may have lost it, but let me see here. I think it was from Josh. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is it the one that just got reposted by Tedder? Fast forward 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Fast forward 5 years. Where do you want to be in your aviation life? Is the question. 5 years from now, where do you want to
Mm.
be in your aviation life?
You go first while I think about it.
I think Brian and I were talking about this on the phone earlier today. and it's actually, there's another question that just came in that cracked me up that I wanted to get to as well from Wheel Air Rentals, who said this is along the same lines. How come you don't post many flying videos anymore?
Mm,
Um, Probably both fair and slightly related questions. So I have come to this thing like where I'm kind of content in my, not content, you're kind of in this midlife stage, right? Where like life is still super busy. I've got my youngest is graduating high school this year, and I'm in the middle of my career, and I've got a lot of irons in the fire, like everybody does. And so like I gung ho aviation, got my private pilot certificate, and now it's kind of settled into like, I guess kind of where I thought aviation would be for me, which is kind of like a um, super enjoyable hobby that I love. And I've told a lot of people this. I may have talked about on the podcast too, like running, like being involved in this flying club that we have going here. And like, this is all aviation related for me, and has become as much fun and as much of a passion as actually flying is. Like, right, like watching other people fly and keeping this thing running so that other people have access to planes, and just seeing people get there. We had 2 new solo students in the past couple weeks who've soloed for their first time, and you know these things have all become equally as kind of enjoyable for me to just kind of be part of that. And so it's kind of become, when time allows or when circumstances allow, to fly, and it makes sense, and it's great to do. I just have been flying less, and I have become super okay with that. I'm making the flights that I take count, and kind of be what I want them to be. And then so a lot of things have slowed down. I have a lot of footage, and I do have good intentions here of getting back kind of on a publishing schedule and getting content out there. But I think it's going to shift a little bit from maybe what it had been before into more of the, like, the people I'm flying with, people the relationships that come from flying, probably more stuff around the club and things that we're doing here. And so it's going to change a little bit. In 5 years, I would think in 5 years I will have done my instrument. I would think in 5 years. A lot can change in 5 years. I mean, a lot's changed for me in the last year or two. So I would think, but I still think I'll be recreationally just kind of enjoying it as the hobby that it is for me. And I have certainly slowed down a bit. In the last 6 to 8 months than I had maybe intended to, but it's working with my life schedule and just kind of where things are at right now. And I'm not trying to force it or be stressed about it. And it's just it's going to be what it is. And I still love it. There's none of that has changed. Like, it's not like I'm saying, oh, I don't like this as much anymore. None of that has changed. It's just availability and time, like everyone else, I think.
I think it
What
also
about you?
makes sense. Well, I was just to comment on what you said. I think that it makes sense that when you go, like you said, gung ho through your training to get it done, and then you've got the initial sort of I've got my license now, and I'm going to use it to do things, and it is a license to learn, so you're getting out there to kind of cement your knowledge and go through the experiences that you need to go through to understand how to things we've talked about. They don't teach you how to go to an airport and deal with this or whatever. So
Right.
going through all of those experiences, and then taking up your family and your friends and just kind of getting all that kind of locked in. And then because I can relate to this. When I first got my license, I still wanted to be flying at the same clip or frequency that I had been training, because I was so concerned with any kind of atrophy of my skills, or I didn't work this hard to let something slide or to start.
Hmm.
And it's also kind of a big jump, your consciousness, right? To get out there. People don't realize, we've done an episode of sort of like, you got your private pilot license, now what?
Yeah.
There's that feeling of kind of almost disembodiment after you're out of the rhythm of training, and then you're just kind of out there. You almost have, it's almost like, I'm not saying it's like being a prisoner or something, but it's like you almost kind of don't know how to make it on the outside, right? Like, you got to figure out how to sort of adjust your mindset. And so I guess what I'm saying is that, you're still, it's not like you're not flying. And when you do fly, you are being safe and you still feel proficient, and you're not getting outside of yourself or letting things atrophy to a point to where you're scaring yourself or losing your stick and rudder skills or
Right.
decision making or anything like that. So, I think it makes total sense that there's just
Yeah,
kind of there's this kind of a denouement to the whole tale.
that's right. And I think it's utilitarian in a way too, because I have been flying for work. I mean, I've been flying to go to places that I need to go for work. And I had an incident the last trip I took. Had a coworker with me, lost an alternator in flight, had a diversion to Charlottesville. Like, all of these things were first. And to your point, Brian, I think there is, like I told you earlier, I still feel like when I go out and fly, I still am I haven't lost the things. I haven't forgotten how to do the things. I'm still find myself making the right choices and doing things the right way, and
Sure.
still understand how things work. It's kind of like Scott Gleason just asked this the same question. You get nervous when you've been away from flying, like your skills with the plane, etc. So far, it hasn't happened for me. I haven't felt that when I've gone out again after a layoff and thought, well, shoot, I don't know what I'm doing. It hasn't as much of that happens, even when you look. I'm flying three different airplanes now: a 150 and a 172 and the 235, and so they're all different in their own ways. It's as much as that every time you get in. I do find myself still having to check, like, wait, what are my speeds? I have to think, what are they in this plane again? Like, this is, oh yeah, yeah, and have to double check the checklists on, like, what are my speeds in this plane and what are my things. But
Yeah.
no, I haven't got to that point yet where I felt like that it's a
Well,
problem.
and for Scott also, I'd like to say that, for what Chris is saying here, keep in mind, Chris, you were a person that was reasonably timid in your early training, because you have a fully formed frontal lobe, and there were moments where that I think are very relatable for a lot of people, where it's like, hey man, I went out to the plane. I had every intention of soloing today and getting another solo hour, and I got all my stuff set up and I was all ready to go, and I just wasn't feeling it, and I just felt a little freaked out, or I don't know, I just had a weird mental block, and I just decided not to fly. So
Mhm.
you've gone from that to now being in a place of like, yeah, I can fly. I can not fly for a month and pick it back up, and it's granted, like, you're not going to do that. You're still going to have decision making based in the idea that, okay, maybe this is not the thing. Like, I'm not going to go from not flying for 2 months or whatever to taking my family on a big trip and going to a lot of unfamiliar places, or I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
you're not.
exactly.
So there's a lot of factors there. But anyway, so we'll get to some other stuff here. But real quick, my 5-year plan is to. I'm a freelancer, and so I don't even know how I'm going to have an income on a month-to-month basis. My 5-year plan is to just be functional and vaguely able to fly. But I am working on my instrument rating, and I do have some schemes and some plans that I'm working on to start making some concerted steps in that way. So I have, and there's a lot to accomplish there, but aviation life in 5 years, I would love to be in a place where at least maybe I've figured out how to have a steady enough income to where I feel confident enough to get into maybe a partnership with a plane, because I'm in a rental kind of partnership kind of thing right now with 4 other pilots and the owner. And even though I don't get any equity in it or whatever, that seems to be like the right situation to be in. So all that being said, I mean, I don't know. I saw that Piper Tri Pacer on Trade a Plane for $12,000. I was like, I would fly that thing to Mexico. Like, like, I don't care. Uh, Granted, it probably needs about $40,000 worth of work, but you get the idea. I hope to own a plane in 5 years in some way.
Yep, for sure. Another question from the chat room tonight. Flying past 50 says, to me, midlife pilot, I've seen a few videos with your daughter flying with you. Are your kids interested in learning to fly? My son, who you've not met on the channel, is absolutely not interested in getting in a small airplane ever. But my daughter, Cecilia, who you've seen in a bunch, definitely is very much interested and is so far ahead. Just has such a great head start just for the amount of time she's been with me. She's actually flown. I've let her fly left seat in both the 172 and the 150 a few times with me, and do some things and do some maneuvers. We've done some stall. I mean, we've done some stuff together. And she's got a real good concept already in her mind of just how the airplane, how it works. That I think she would be great at it, and she wants to do it. She's going to college in the fall, so she's local though. She's staying here in Morgantown at WVU, and I think once all that kind of gets settled in and find out how schedule's going to work and stuff, she definitely wants to start training. She applied for some aviation training scholarships,
Ah, cool.
and some things. So we'll see. We'll learn in the fall, in the spring this year, if any of those pan out. So she's definitely interested. Yeah, she definitely wants to learn to fly.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think that she's clearly a natural and kind of has the she has the bug on some level. You can just tell
For sure.
she's a
Yep.
natural to it. So cool. Now uh maybe since we have a little bit of a break here or something, we got to find the other questions, but I figure we'll do our little I don't know what we're calling this, but it's like story time with
Story
Brian.
with Brian. You put your reading glasses on, and like
That's
slide them down your nose, and like
yes.
look.
I would show the pictures. And so all right. So you guys, everybody listen to this and then chime in with any thoughts you have. But this is a scenario that stuck out to me because like I said, it's the same, basically the same plane I am usually flying. So it's out of page 95 in the killing zone, and I'll make this quick while you guys are throwing in some other comments and questions and things. So South Lake Tahoe, California. The pilot began this takeoff from the beginning of the 8,544-foot runway. An air traffic controller observed the airplane, a Piper Cherokee 180, become airborne after rolling between 2,500 and 3,000 feet. Witnesses reported the airplane pitched up and down several times and was flying slowly as it climbed between 100 and 200 feet AGL. While still over the runway and out of ground effect, the airplane commenced a steep 45 to 90-degree left bank and crashed into a field 900 feet east of the runway. Wreckage and ground impact signatures were consistent with the aircraft having collided with the terrain while in an 80-degree left bank. No mechanical malfunctions. During the preceding 20-month-long period since the pilot received the private pilot certificate, he had flown for 6 hours. His total experience in the Piper airplane was 3.1 hours, of which 1.4 had been a checkout flight given by a CFI. The CFI reported he had not checked out the pilot at a high density altitude airport. The calculated density altitude was about 8,570 feet. Probable cause: the pilot's failure to maintain adequate airspeed during initial climb under high density altitude weather conditions and a resulting inadvertent stall spin. Factors which contributed to the accident were the pilot's overconfidence in his personal ability and lack of experience flying the airplane. Overconfidence combined with lack of experience is a deadly mix. This airplane was not overweight, but the high elevation and hot July afternoon temperatures joined forces, and the wings, propeller, and engine were gasping for air and could not do what the pilot asked them to do. So I don't know. When I read that, I just thought, you know how like, okay, obviously, if I'm at a place where the density altitude's 8,000, whatever it was, I'm going to be paying attention to that. All that being said, especially when you're in training aircraft that are often 140 or 160 horsepower, even a 180 kind of feels like, you know, like I've got some room to, play with here. And then, reasonable useful load and all that. I don't know, you just feel like it's a pretty decent powerful enough aircraft. 8,500-foot runway, you just feel, because what struck me about it was you kind of only think about getting off the ground if you're just at a glance considering all those things, but that climb
There's
rate
way more. Yep.
is a lot more going on there. But anyway, I just thought, gosh, to be in a reasonably powered aircraft that is not overweight on an 8,500-foot runway, it seems, almost hard to imagine that would, I don't know, without doing the calculations or really thinking about it, which
Yeah.
you
So
should.
you could back up and think. I mean, it's easy. These are all armchair quarterback things. But you could say, well, you wonder how much performance calculation did he do? In terms of did he know? And I think I saw Ben Singer nailed it. If not off by this point, abort. Did he do his
Right.
calculation? Did he know what his ground run should have been? Uh, did he lean appropriately
Right.
for the altitude that you always you get pounded in your training like mixture full rich for takeoff. Well, not at 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
Um, it's not. You lean for best power. I mean, was that a factor?
Mhm.
But yeah, it could definitely be things that you could get complacent about. You just look at the long runway and you think, oh man, this is I'm golden.
Yeah. Well, and also just the idea that I think it's important for newer, we're all new, but I'm saying like really, really brand new certificated pilots to, uh, especially when you get checked out in a new plane, do build up slowly as you're gaining experience, and don't do things that are new to you or new environments or new circumstances, too quickly. So yeah, there's a lot there. And the fact that he was in a bank, I don't know what the layout is there, if there was some terrain or, something that he was looking at, but the other thing obviously there is, if you're having a problem with power and you're already committed to the takeoff and you don't have any runway remaining, you better, it seems like straight and level as best as possible is going to be what you want to go for. So yeah, anyway, I just thought that was an interesting scenario to ponder because like I said, I fly a Cherokee 180. So what is everybody else saying here?
Oh, there's some good questions. One dog geek says, "What are your density altitude personal minimums in your plane?" I don't have them because I haven't thought about them because I don't fly anywhere that it's a factor. I mean, it's even here on the worst summer days. I mean, we certainly think about it at Fairmont, right? Because we have it's under 3,000 foot runway with an obstruction at the end, and in underpowered airplanes with full fuel. I mean, we've cut it close. But the first summer I was training with my instructor in 52 Lima. Um, my first lesson was in July, and it was like hot, and they always kept the tanks full, and it was me and him. Thank God Tyler's a little dude. We I felt like we were picking our feet up trying not to hit the fence at the end of the hill when we left the airport. And so from that
Mm.
moment forward, we kept the tanks at half. So then still to this day, there's 10 gallons aside in this airplane. We just keep it that way. So from that moment forward, I definitely thought about it here at Fairmont. There hasn't been a case. I mean, I can't think of a time. I'll think about it in the summer and do my calculations here, but you do get a little spoiled. You move up to like the Cherokee 235, right? And we look at it here and go like, it wouldn't matter if it was 115 degrees. We would just be like, let's go. I mean, it feels like it would just get out of here. But our field elevation here is 1,000 feet, so it's really hard for it to get to a point where it's super crazy. But that's a good question. I haven't thought about it much.
So
Probably
Ben
your
is saying,
case too, right, Brian? Because
well,
you're
yeah, I mean, but I also, I think if I think this is not to say that you shouldn't think about these things if you're just a renter. You should obviously think about these things, but I feel like the likelihood of me being in a scenario like that is going to be if I own a plane, because then I'm actually pushing useful load and trying to go and being in far away places where going to Arizona or whatever. It doesn't mean that stuff, by the way, a lot of these other scenarios outlined in this are, there's one just prior in the book that's from South Carolina, and they make a point to say this can happen anywhere. Right. So it's not just about when you're at Tahoe.
right.
So yeah, I've never really had to think about it because I've just never been anywhere remotely close to loaded up, and I haven't been doing super short runways, or I don't know. So I've never really been that concerned about it, but this is a reminder to sort of maybe come up with that.
It's a good one. It's a good
Yep,
one. We've
it's a very good
definitely
one.
I've definitely done it. I've taken off in the 150 at max gross weight out of here. It was also like 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was not a factor. And then 52 Lima I've had close. I've had my wife and daughter before, but it was also in the winter.
Yeah.
Um, but I like Stinky Weasel said in here, he won't fly this plane with his wife and kid beyond 75 degrees. It's you just at Clarksburg we would. I mean, I've had contingency plans actually where we were going to go somewhere. We ended up getting weathered out. We were going to take it somewhere, and I said, well, I may have to pick you up at Clarksburg,
Yeah.
just because it's, it's an 8,000-foot runway with, without an obstruction, and we could get out of there safely, but I would have had questions about doing it from France. So I guess it's not true to say I haven't thought about it. There have been cases where we've thought about it.
So Fly Sport says, what are your top learnings from the killing zone? Mine is it's always fuel and ADM of, hey, watch this. Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay. I may have mentioned this at some other time, but when I was training and while I was training, I was reading the killing zone, and there's an example in there where two pilots stopped somewhere, got fuel, got in the plane, took off, and then had fuel exhaustion because they each thought the other put the fuel caps back on and they didn't see them or check them. And those were the two things in one sort of episode there were really, I think, the things that stuck out to me the most. Not necessarily just even specifically, but um, more symbolically or emblematically, in the sense
Mhm.
that I read that and I thought, especially in the 172, you got to make an effort to go, when you get the plane fueled up at a full service thing like we do in training all the time, you got to make sure that those caps are back on. I got in the plane once with my CFI for a lesson, and they had just fueled the plane, and we were they were doing a lot of construction, so they had the plane pushed off in a place it normally wasn't. There were a lot of things that were sort of weird, and it just kind of had me thrown off of my pre-flight game, or I don't know, something. You know how it is when you're a student, especially. It's like one little change, and you're like, I don't even know where I am anymore. But um, anyway, we actually got in. We had just sort of kind of gotten in the plane and started to fidget for seatbelts or whatever, and I realized that I had not checked the gas caps. I had sumped. I had done all the other things, but I had not checked the gas caps um, after they had fueled the plane. And I got up. I said, and it's kind of like you're already kind of buckled in. It's a choice to go, I'm getting back out of the plane. Not a huge deal, but it is sort of like in your
Yeah,
consciousness.
yeah.
And I was like, hold on, I'm going to go check this. And he was like, great. And I went, and they had left one of the fuel caps off. And I was like, wow, because I had just read the thing a few days before. And so I just thought, okay, this can happen at any time. And we would have been fine, obviously, but it wouldn't have been great. And and then the other thing about it was the two pilot thing, you know, and I had somebody else tell me on the field once, a very experienced pilot. He said, there's nothing more dangerous than a plane full of pilots. And it was really operating on that same sentiment. So those are the things I think from the killing zone that have stood out to me the most. Wow, this ended up being sort of like a killing zone episode, but uh, yeah. So those, to answer the question, that's really it.
This has been the Killing Zone, brought to you by Brian. Cool. That's a
What
good
about
segment.
you?
We should keep doing that.
Yeah. What,
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think I read a lot of it and think so. I have to put myself in a lot of those positions too, because a lot of them, I think it's easy to think, um, I'm not going to do that.
yeah.
Uh, but I think the overarching theme, like someone else mentioned in here, is that it's like complacency is just you can't take a day off of the routine or the things that you normally check just because you just can't. It happens even in our flying club situation. Like, I mean, I've come in here and I've found the gas caps off of 52 Lima after the plane was put away. Now, how's that happen? I tell you, if somebody fueled it up and taxied it over here with the caps off and just left them sitting on the wings. That makes me nervous for a whole other reason. Like, how long has it been sitting in here with the gas caps open? Like, how
Right.
many bugs are in here? What's happened? Anyway, but yeah, I just think complacency. Just you just can't take a day off ever. Um,
Yep.
don't make exceptions. Those are the ones that get you. The one time you say like, well, this is technically doesn't meet my minimums, but I can. This time it's okay because of this. Well, those are the ones that that'll get you.
All right, Ben asked us
Um,
this, and we did not do it, so now he's typing in all caps,
okay,
"Question."
I see it, Ben. I see it, Ben. We will get to that question in one moment. Um, I do want to answer One Dog Geek's question. Who back to when I said I had Cecilia fly in the left seat and I flew in the right seat. How was right seat
Mm.
flying? How hard
Oh,
was
yeah.
that getting used to? It's terrible. There's nothing good about it. To the CFIs, I don't know how you make that transition. Like it's horrible, and it's not just what you think. Like I would obviously never. I had had 3 or 4 landings prior in the right seat with another pilot from the club, so it's not like I had never done it. But that's all the time I had. It was enough to know that I could absolutely safely land this airplane from this seat. Like it was not a safety problem. You think like, oh, it's just my sight picture. It's just like the left to right sight picture when you land. Oh no, it is so much more than that. Everything is weird. Just the fact that you're controlling the yoke with your right hand. That's
Yeah.
bizarre. And why does the throttle feel weird when it's over here? And
Yeah.
like everything feels weird. You round out and flare. It's not just left to right. It's like the sight picture of everything is weird. So I need to get a bunch more time at it before I feel super good about it.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, it
Also, there's
is
the
it is
parallax of the gauges as well.
yes, everything is different. It's a good skill to have probably because there will be times where you'll want to fly with somebody else and somebody's got to sit in the right seat. So, you ought to get when you're out with a pilot friend, I mean, that'd be a good thing for any of you guys to do. If you're out with other pilot friends, go do some pattern work where you trade off landings and you always got somebody else in the left seat, a competent
Yeah.
pilot that can
Yeah.
help you out if you need it. But like, it's probably a good skill to have to be able to fly from either seat and just feel comfortable in doing it. But it's worth it. But it's weird.
It's like, feel like you've learned how to fly? Would you like to learn how to fly all over again?
Exactly.
You too can have the experience of learning how to fly all over again. No, that
Exactly.
sounds awesome. Yeah, I'd like to try it. I mean, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Good challenge. All right. You want to answer Ben's question?
oh yeah, yeah.
Ben Singer. Question: what are your lottery planes? So you win the lottery. What airplane are you buying?
By the way, just side note, if everybody can see here, the way to get a question answered for sure is to type question in all caps. I don't think it's passive aggressive, but it's close, Ben. It's close. No, all right, go ahead. What do you got?
It sounds funny. I'm sticking in these little planes. I'm probably staying in a 150 or 172. My whole thing. Of course, I own a 235. Doesn't really fit my mission. It's great because we lease it to the club and it's working for the club. But like when it became obvious that my wife wasn't going to want to fly on trips and do a lot of those things, it kind of changed my perspective, I think, on what would be a good plane. I mean,
Mhm,
I don't need a traveler really. I need
mhm.
something I can hobby in, something I can operate for reasonably cheaply and that I'm comfortable in, that I enjoy flying. So
So pick one or pick two.
I'm staying at the 172. I think is probably my plane.
Now, okay,
Pretty boring,
lottery
I know,
a
but
lottery 172 would be what? Like, would that be G1000 kind of thing or,
yeah,
like a brand
yeah,
new one that
I'd
costs
get a
like
new one.
whatever?
Yeah, I'd get a new one. Yeah,
I get a new one. You won the lottery, get a new
I'd get a
one.
new one. Absolutely, I'd get a new one.
The plush seats and they don't come with ashtrays anymore, but still. Um, yeah, so I think for me, I feel the same way. It's like, I mean, I've often said, like with cars, right? Every time I see somebody with like a supercar or an incredibly expensive car, all I do in my mind is think, how many old 80s Toyotas could I buy? This guy bought a Bentley. I could have bought, like a warehouse full of 80s Toyotas, and that would make me so much happier than having a Bentley. So, so I think in airplanes, it's kind of the same thing. Um, our friend Adam had a great idea. He said that, if he could buy a plane, what would make sense to him to do is to get an early Cirrus that's all steam gauge. And I thought that's actually not a bad idea, but I'm not a Cirrus guy. I like the old school stuff. I like the just, looks like plane in the dictionary kind of stuff. I really, really love flying the Archer 180, and I feel like that is the sweet spot for me. It's a low wing. It's, reasonable fuel burn. reasonable useful load,
Mhm.
all of that. I might say an archer, but at the same time, I also okay if I can buy more than one, I would get a I would get an archer. Okay, I would buy three. I would get an archer for like that's like the Toyota Camry kind of thing. Then
Uh-huh.
I would get a cardinal.
Oh,
Um,
Cardinal. Okay. I changed my answer. I'm changing my answer. Yeah. Lose the
I would
struts. Lose the struts.
right and give me that view, and I don't know. I think the Cardinal itself is such a fascinating story, how they just got the engineers together and they said, "Make a better 172," and they did. It had some problems, but they kinda did, and then people were like, "I don't know, it's like SM57 microphones or whatever the standard is for anything." People just
Right.
go, "Well, that's the standard, and I don't feel comfortable moving beyond that. You can tell me it's better all day. I don't want better, I want the standard."
Right.
So,
Right.
anyway, I would get a Cardinal and, that would be sort of my aerial photography and videography plane, and then I would also have an arrow, and that would be my long flight, retractable, high performance kind of. So I'd have an arrow, a cardinal, and an archer.
Okay. It's a good lineup. One Dog Geek asks, this is an interesting question, I think. If considering an airplane partnership, what are the obvious and subtle characteristics that you'd want in a potential partner? What obvious and subtle things do you want to avoid? Man, I think that's an interesting question. It depends, I guess, on how active. I mean, I guess it depends on a couple things. So we did ours kind of weird. There are two other partners in the plane that I own. Ours is a little bit different. A disclaimer is that it's in a full on exclusive use lease back to this flying club. So effectively, we bought this plane and then gave up all rights to it. It's basically like it's technically ours, but like we don't control anything about it. How it gets used, who uses it, how it's maintained. uh, I have to schedule it like everybody else. So it's not exactly like I'm just sharing time with these two other guys in a plane. Ours was very much a business relationship. Like we just needed three people to come together to make it work businessly. Um, they were people that I knew already, which was helpful. People that we all got along and had the same kind of intentions for the what the plane was going to be for us. I don't know how much all of that matters in terms of. I mean, I think you want to find someone who's like um, gonna have the same kind of amount of respect for the airplane in terms of just taking care of it and doing things the right way, if they're a way that lines up with how you want to do them. Maybe the same vision for the kind of investment you want to make in it. Like I wouldn't want to go into partnership with somebody who's like, I've got the $20,000 I need to come in, but like I'm not spending a penny more to upgrade a thing. And when meanwhile you're thinking like, I don't know, I'd like to put two G5s next year and then um, a autopilot the next year. I mean, I think you want to have some idea of people's like goals during the time that you're going to be in this together. And one thing I'll say, this isn't about the characteristics of a person, but I think it's very important that when you form this partnership with these people, that you formalize a buy-sell agreement that explicitly outlines how people come in or go out of the airplane. And what I mean by that is if partner B wants out of the plane next year, are you the other two going to buy them out at the current fair market value of the plane, or is it at the value that we bought it? The details. It doesn't have to be contentious. Just put them on a piece. It doesn't have to be super formal. Get them on paper somewhere. Everybody sign it and have it notarized and have a document that says this is how we handle in and out. Just so there's no ambiguity to it when that circumstance arises. I just think maybe finding people who have the same kind of vision for the plane. One of my partners is actually in the chat right now, LOLing at my advice because he's LOLing because it's something we've been talking about doing the whole time and we haven't done it yet. We don't have a buy-sell agreement. And we've been talking about it, but yeah, I just think finding people who have kind of the same like mentality of how you want to deal with this asset that you've purchased together over the time is probably the most important to me, I guess. I hope that's helpful. I'm not a huge expert in the matter. Like I said, our circumstance is pretty unique in that it's a lease back, so it's yeah. And I'll second what Mike Hines says. AOPA was amazingly helpful, setting up the partnership, invaluable research. We didn't do that for buying the plane, but I used AOPA a ton in their flying club division for assistance in setting up this club,
Mm.
and they were immensely helpful in that regard too. So they are a great resource. If anyone's not an AOPA member, I cannot stress enough the value that can come from that. They're a good organization that are doing really good things for GA. So
And Mike Hines is saying that he's at he's got a Cardinal, and he's based north of Huntsville. So Mike Hines, I'm calling you out right now. You have to come to John Toon and give me a ride in my lottery plane. And look, if you're open to it, I've got $1,000 right now that we can write up a little notarized a little something.
I was just in Huntsville over Thanksgiving visiting the in-laws, and I was looking for something to do. So I'll have to remember Mike's
Yeah.
nearby.
Yeah, we need some good Huntsville contacts. Yeah, it's a hop, skip, and a jump really from John Toon. So
Yeah,
especially in the Cardinal. So
yeah, for
you
sure.
know, come on next time you're up here for a bachelorette party. Oh yeah, Nashville has become like David Byrne had this great line about he said he feels like an advertisement for a version of himself. That's what Nashville has become, as an advertisement for a version of itself. That's my cultural commentary, little interstitial piece
I
before we
love
get
it.
into the Skycatcher.
Todd says, anybody ever flown a Skycatcher? Likey, no
Yeah,
likey? I'm sure that timestamp Tedder could give all kind of input on the Skycatcher. He flew a Skycatcher at the Nobody Cares Flying that we had down in Nashville over the fall, and
yeah,
we all sat in it. And I didn't get to fly in it or go in it, but I found the seating, like the where your legs are and where things are, to be very strange and peculiar. I think it would have been fun to fly. Like I think it would have been pretty cool, but it was definitely different.
yeah. It's kind of like being in like a 1977 MG or something, Uh,
Yeah.
and your leg. It's just weird because the sitting position is just your legs are just sort of straight out, like you're just sitting at an L position. Your legs don't go down really anywhere. uh, but I also thought it was really cool, and I'm also just looking at it like, wow, some of these avionics are nicer than a lot
Yeah.
of planes I fly.
Yeah.
But they're pretty rare, right? I guess Ted knows about this, but
Yeah.
there's not that many of them, and I guess that's another one of the planes where they thought that that would become the new uh, sort of training airplane that everybody can manage to have, and it just never really fully took off. But that was out of Smyrna, so right out of the area here. There's one for rent, and some video, I think, of Ted being blown like a leaf, or you know, and handling it well. Ted, we've always given Ted a lot of props because we think that we're getting some experience here, and then we look at Ted's resume, and he's flown 100 different planes. But if you go back to our audio archives, we put out a little sort of bonus episode in December that was basically Ben the Sage and Timestamp Tedder talking about the value and the sort of the pros and cons of taking if you're a newer pilot or you have some share of hours, whatever you have. I mean, Ben's got more than any of us, but just the idea that, is it better necessarily that you have more time in one plane, or what are the pros and cons of that versus Ted having, you know, Ted's got, 1.7 in most planes ever made or something. So
Exactly.
he's a checkout flight king. Uh but uh but yeah, so that's a cool thing to go back and check out. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
Ted's Skycatcher.
He flew. I still love that story. That one still to me is one of the greatest. Ted flies commercial all the way across the country from like Washington to Atlanta, hitches a ride with Ben Singer in his 182 to Smyrna. We're all gathering already in Nashville. Ben drops Ted off at Smyrna. So Ted can get checked out in the 162. Newly licensed sport pilot Ted, like, gets checked out in this Skycatcher. Has like the world's longest Skycatcher checkout flight probably ever known to man. We were watching him on FlightAware, and it was like, what are they putting him through? So he like gets checked out in this thing. Um, it's getting dark. He flies into John Tune, crazy Nashville airspace, and then meets us. Still makes it in time for dinner, and I'm like, that dude is like inspirational. Like it, I just that was the craziest. Yeah. Oh yeah. And Evan's son Sam, the CFI, was the checkout pilot for him in that checkout flight. Crazy, just what a crazy adventure that was.
So we need to do so after this, there is going to be a sort of a private, but we'll perhaps share some of this with the greater audience later if we get permission. Evan's gonna be breaking down his instrument check ride, and his son Sam, CFI, will also be CFII will be involved there. I you know what we need to do is we need to talk to Sam. We need to find
About
out.
Ted's about
Yeah.
checkout flight. Yes.
Well,
Write it down. That's on the agenda for tonight.
what
What exactly did Ted do that caused you to have a 2.5? It wasn't 2.5, but to have like the world's longest Skycatcher checkout flight. That's what I want to know. What did
it's
he
like
do?
there are 6 levers or buttons in this plane. No,
You want
it's its
another
own little
Steve
beast,
Kern?
you know. You gotta know what you're doing. You're flying all these planes.
I
So,
guess. I guess.
uh,
Well, that was
but
good.
yeah, man. Is anybody else got any quick ones for us?
Um,
See, now all the questions are just for Ted.
yeah, Ted's taking over Ted's taking over over the chat room here. No, I think that's probably a wrap.
Yeah.
Should remind everybody, I know we do this every podcast, but if you're an audio only podcast subscriber, thank you. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and then leave a comment or review if you can on the Apple site. But also, if you want to be part of this crazy fun that is our chat room, we record this thing every other Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Midlife Pilot YouTube channel. And we've got such a great group of people here. This little community, and it's super fun to join in with this. So be sure to join us if you can on Wednesdays for the live recording. We publicize it everywhere we know to do that.
Yeah, we're not exactly the best at promoting what we're doing, but we try. And then also, I don't know if you've noticed, but we are in the top 20 of aviation podcasts, and that
Yeah.
includes some, pretty heavy hitters, that I've never heard of, and then some other heavy hitters that I have heard of. So let's just keep this thing going organically. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's wrap it up here. It was great podcasting with you. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll record again on March 1st. Wednesday, March 1st will be our next recording night, and topic to be determined. Stay tuned for that. We love the anticipation of never knowing what's coming up next.
That's right. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.